Hey friends, how are you? Just sending out a couple notices to my Discord that I've gone live. And I'll start babbling in a few minutes, as if I haven't already started. Let's see. You might hear my cat in the background. It's probably the most exciting thing you're going to hear all night. And I got that out of my Discord. My Discord, by the way, is called Wormwood and Belladonna. If you're interested in joining on, let's put an invite right in the chat. My network is predictably slow tonight. I've been having troubles with it. I got a new router, and I'm now putting a note into Xfinity because I am having issues. Hello. Here's our gaming Discord. Got a couple of viewers in. I guess that inviting people thing actually works. Send a note to a couple of the regulars, and I'll start talking about what it is I'm going to talk about tonight. So, for those of you, I got a few people in here actually who I haven't seen on, which is cool. Thanks for joining on. This is primarily going to be, tonight's talk is primarily going to be about Fox and Boar Games, which is the game company I am launching, or as I have had a soft launch so far, as far as getting some press out there. It's amazing how difficult these various platforms make it to share a uniform link. Thanks for bearing with me. All right. Just a few minutes to get out there. We'll see if we can get some more people on. And I'll start. So I'll bring up some content to share, right? That's what we're all here for. So as I was saying, if you don't already know, this is primarily a tabletop role playing game stream. We haven't started any actual casts of games yet, broadcasts of games yet, but that is the intent long run to possibly have some of that going on here. My regular group, I don't know if they're going to be down for streaming constantly, but I may actually start once the my games launch. I will definitely be working on some game chat. Let me see if I can share this with you easily, or at least throw it up there in terms of a background. Then we'll get to it in a few minutes. Hey Fuzz, what's up? Good to see you. Hey, it's funny. I saw Commander Fuzz. It didn't even dawn on me that it was you, which is kind of funny because literally the only way I know you is Fuzzy. So that's actually rather funny. I was like, oh yeah, there's some guy named Commander Fuzz following me. Well, thanks for tuning in. Yeah, so I'm just kind of getting used to this idea of streaming and integrating all my media into these various platforms. It's kind of been an adjustment for me. I mean, like Fuzzy knows, Fuzzy knows. We're probably about the same age, if not, we're definitely the same generation. And I've got students who are 18 to 20 who have these huge streaming networks. They actually like have created these whole cottage lifestyles and industries out of, which is amazing. But when I've decided to get really serious about getting some of my own games out there, everybody said you should start streaming something. I've had people even say stream everything you do. And I don't really, I'm not quite at that level of personal publicity. I'm not really about to be, let me stream while I take a shower and talk to you about what soap I use. It's not. I don't think anyone needs that from me. So I guess the big news that some people know, um, it is that this is kind of where things have been going for me for the past 2 years. I've been in intensive research on making a new fantasy game. Got some new people joining on. Yeah, I was a little skittish too. I mean, obviously I get up in front of people and I play music, so I have less of the publicity fear than a lot of people do. Um, I teach for a living, so I walk into classrooms and teach, and I'm not too worried about that. But streaming is different. It's this weird kind of invasion. We've had all kinds of fun things happen so far. I don't know if PJ's logged on yet tonight, but 8 viewers. Thanks, guys. I feel like a celebrity now. I'm really just some dude with a bunch of like Lord of the Rings stuff in the background. That's it. But we've had cat bombings. We've had my dog come in and start howling at the screen. So it's always this kind of weird space. In my connection, I live in southeastern PA, just north of New Hope, Pennsylvania, for anybody who knows where that is. And we live like kind of in the woods, and half the time my reception is just fine. And then like all of a sudden it just drops. One night, mysteriously, my microphone just stopped working. My good USB mic. And that was, hey, there's the croc. I see the croc just made an appearance. Justin the croc. And I had my microphone just shut off in the middle of a stream once. So it is this kind of learning curve. And part of why I'm doing this is to get used to doing this, because I'm pretty intent on getting my own work out there, both creative arts, visual arts, fine arts, music, etc., and also the game stuff. But the game stuff is really where I feel that things are going in terms of community, online communities, and replacing things like Facebook. So I'll just go over that before I get to the big announcements. But some of you know who follow me on Facebook that my initial Facebook account was hacked or was hit by some weirdo algorithm, and it was literally just completely disabled. I mean, on some of my pages, I had well over 1,000 followers from people who had been following my music work and all this other stuff for 10 years, and it's just been really frustrating. My new account is under moderation. It'll be fine for a couple days, and I can post and like stuff, and then it just goes out again. And I'm kind of done fighting with it. So Wilhelm Waitley, my manager, is the guy who is running the pages that you're seeing the posts from. You know, he's not me. He's definitely not me. He's not even connected. Lives in another reality. So he's a Waitley. So if you know the reference, you know the reference. But it's been really frustrating. And as usual, I've gotten absolutely nothing in terms of help from any of the tech support there. I can't even get a hold of a human to interact with. And I'm like, wow, you're billing yourself as the up and coming way that people are going to advertise in the metaverse, right? And like, I've paid for advertising there in the past, so it's not like I never paid them anything. I didn't pay them a lot, but still, I'm like, okay, you just lost a customer. And I understand they're huge, but I grew up around people running businesses, and they all said every customer counts, right? Like, so. But anyway, I'm still exploiting them. I've got Fox and Board Games over on Facebook. I do have the URLs. I do have web pages coming. I don't necessarily, I'm not going to rush to get the full web page up. I mean, most of you know the current game design material is up at Harrowland RPG and harrowlandrpg.com, but I just have it off a Weebly page now. So this is the game I've been working on intently for the past several years, and I've decided to effectively get it out there. I need to really set up my own publishing company. So that's kind of the big thing of this stream tonight. And this might end up on YouTube. It might not. I'm not sure. It's going to be Fox and... So there's Peach. Wilbur Waitley. Yes. Less adept with Harkins. Much more experience driving the Mouth's Eldritch Visage. Yes. Yeah. Seriously. Yeah, basically. He's basically a 4chan mod. Yeah, really. It's kind of funny, like, being on Facebook and realizing I'm actually say things, and people would, like, I wouldn't have to filter myself anymore. Not that I ever filtered myself much. Any of you, the people who are on here right now, all know me in person, at least to some degree or another. But I don't filter myself all that much. I mean, unless I have to. Like, at school, I do, obviously. Though I'm tenured, so I can say almost anything I want. But anyway, Fuzz, yeah, I mean, you should try streaming. I don't know. Try streaming one of your D&D games or something sometime. That would be awesome. That would be cool. So, yeah, so there's this game I've been working on for the past number of years, and it's gotten progressively bigger. And, yeah, I know that Peach is also like me, that he pretty much has no filter. He just says what comes into mind. But we've got I guess that Facebook invite thing works, of making an event and inviting people and putting it on Discord, because I've got a few new people here, which is awesome. So I've got this over at, let's see. So I've got this over at Facebook, Fox and Board Games, and that's what I'm going to publish Tales of the Harrowed Land under. And I also have two other projects that I've talked a little bit about, not too much publicly. The first is Citadels of Jarka, which is a board game, a science fiction board game with overtones of Dune and Settlers of Catan, and this whole idea of resource exploitation and resource trading and building, and a little bit of combat, a little bit of warfare, but it's got this very gold rush feeling on this mineral and gas-rich planet, with these 5 races, extraterrestrial races. Well, to them, they're not extraterrestrial. They're not aliens, right? They're the normal ones. Yeah, oh, good. New Pathfinder 2e? Cool. Yeah, give it a shot. I mean, give it a shot. Like I said, I want to stream Call of Cthulhu right now. And I think the group is, like, right down the middle as far as whether they'd be up for streaming or not. I know, like, half the group is, like, definitely into it. But, I mean, if we're going to do that for Call of Cthulhu, we've got to do the whole candlelight, the dress up, I've got to do the whole thing. It's the Old West setting, as a couple of you know, Justin in particular, the deranged. Well, he's not deranged. He's perfectly fine. The Undertaker, the town Undertaker. But Pathfinder 2, I love Pathfinder 2. I've only played it thanks to a couple friends, but I haven't run it yet. But yeah, see if your players are willing to give it a shot. Like, a couple people have said, like, well, if we start streaming, we got to hold back and censor ourselves. I'm like, no, you don't. I'm like, no, you don't. You absolutely do not. In fact, probably the more ridiculous it is, the more people will love it. So, Fox and Board Games will be coming out, will be produced, um, producing Tales of the Hard Land, Citadels of Jarka board game. Another game that I've been teasing about called Trash Sexy, about raccoons, which started out as this utter joke. Started out as this complete joke on a text thread with Blake and Neil, who were my two longtime gaming friends. And of course, by the time that this text thread was done, over an hour, the idea had both totally degenerated, and people were, they were both like, well, you should just write this up. This could be the thing that actually sells, right? That's the sad part. I mean, I'm thinking this very minimalist, almost maybe progressive tile or progressive encounter role playing game that are randomly generated encounters, that you almost don't even need a GM for, but you could have one, and you all play raccoons, and your whole point is to go out and eat trash and have sex. That's the entire point of the game. Thus the name Trash Sexy. There's different raccoon species, classes that I've already kind of drafted up and teased out on Twitter. And people got like really excited about it. I'm like, oh god, here we go. I'm gonna make a game about raccoons, So Fox and Board Games, that's what's going to be happening. I'm slowly changing all of my branding on various social media to Fox and Board Games. That would be Twitter, Facebook, and Twitter. The other one, Instagram. Yeah, that thing. Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram. At this, the video cast, both the home of this Twitch stream and the accompanying YouTube channel, is still from thetomes.com. I think I'll keep that as a related but separate entity. That's where I'm going with that. So I guess now the big news, I don't know if everybody here's heard it. I think from our core group, our real life in game group, or our regular real life in game group, I think only Diana and Mel know. But yesterday I was informed I've received a year sabbatical from Raritan Valley Community College to develop said gaming content and gaming company as an interface to their game development and game art program, which I wrote. And I wrote the game art program in conjunction with Bill Crosby, who teaches game development. So I'm getting paid to work on a game for a year. Thanks, Justin. I figured you might find this exciting. It is rather surreal, and I've made the joke several times today to my colleagues. Whoever thought 40 years of playing Dungeons and Dragons would pay off, right? I mean, it's kind of unreal. Like, I was joking around with Neil and Blake, like, if 15-year-old you had been told there was even a chance that you would be able to get paid by a college for a year to create games in an academic context, like, would you even understand what this meant? It's like a joke, right? And it's all timing, right? I mean, let's face it. The pandemic, so many more people are gaming and gaming online, even playing D&D online, than ever have before. Like, and you guys know what I'm going to say, because none of you, I think, consider yourselves normal, just like me. Normal people are out there playing D&D online tonight, right? Like, people who never had any access to this, thanks to Critical Role, thanks to Stranger Things, thanks to, remember they played it once in high school, right? Now they're going to play it again. So it's this kind of bizarre space. Yeah, well, right, exactly. We've talked about this before, Peach, is that, we used to be the outcast. I joke with my students about this. One of my students last week, I teach my game class this semester on Fridays, she was like, yeah, she's like, I heard it used to be like not cool at all to play these games. I just laughed at her. I'm like, you are like the biggest outcast among outcasts, not even like the Burnouts wanted to hang out with you because you were too uncool, right? Because you were there playing Dungeons. They'll have them play Dungeons and Dragons too. They just played it really stoned. Like, at least where I went to school, I started playing with all these Burnouts, all smoking weed and dropping acid before playing D&D. I was pretty what was going on at those games. But some of these guys were like dropping acid and coming in and playing the game, So it was just like, it's this surreal experience that all of the sudden this is now a thing. And Yeah. There absolutely is, and even now there is. Like a couple of my game students who are very smart, very good gamers, very good designers are definitely would have been in that burnout category. You know, of course now it's legal in Jersey, so maybe it's a different culture now, which is fine with me too. You know, um, but this idea that like I'm getting paid to sit home and develop this game. Now they want at least one board game and one the RPG, both of which are underway. You know, the RPG, the core of the RPG is written. Now it's just actually composing the document, creating, fleshing out the world, and it's also the board game, the Citadels of Jarka board game is in progress. It's in beta testing. I have a prototype board and every in pieces and everything. And of course, the big angst is I was going to be out at PAX and a couple other big conventions and maybe even at Gen Con these past 2 years promoting all this. Surprise, surprise, that sure didn't work out. But now is the time. And I also gave them statistics that the gaming industry, largely video games, of course, but games in general are now a $140 billion industry. And it there is this big crossover now between the video game world and the pen and paper RPG world and the board gaming world. So my proposal went to a committee, and I was very fortunate on several regards. One, they were a very friendly committee. I don't know how many of you have been in academia or been around academia, but all it takes is one person on a committee to hate your guts for whatever perceived or real reason, and you're sunk, right? Your proposal is sunk. I had a very friendly committee, a very supportive committee. One of the committee members was very interested and clearly knew about RPGs. I have a feeling she probably played it in college or something, and maybe she still does. I don't know. I don't know this person very well, but she was very interested. And part of my whole pitch is that if you followed the game and the game development, you know that these are in fact this is a world which is analogous to our or inspired. See, cats enjoying the playtest. This is a game which Baldur's Gate 3 Cyberpunk. Yeah, video game designers, exactly. So, and by the way, if you don't know, I have the video series from the tomes on YouTube. I'm getting the other video done. So this is my first semester back in person in 2 years with an hour commute each way, and frankly, it has been kicking my ass getting back to it. And I've had a lot of work to catch up on that we missed the past 2 years, so I have not gotten to do the video. I had the social media incident, which really blew my momentum for a couple of weeks trying to recover that. But I am going to get to it. The script is written. I've done a couple read-throughs of it, and hopefully, I was going to do it tonight, but I decided to do this. So, with my big announcement. Well, before I go further, I'm going to have a celebratory drink for my big announcement. If any of you have a drink and want to toast with me, that would be great. I will be opening up some clandestine absinthe, one of my favorite drinks. Something that, for obvious reasons, I don't drink all the time. And despite mythology, it is not a drug. It is simply a very high-octane booze. I do not use sugar cubes. I do not light it on fire. The lighting on fire is a Portuguese nightclub thing. So I'll pour a little more than the ounce of absinthe because it's a celebratory night. And then we will pour some cold water in to loosh it. So here it goes. Now, if you have a dripper, you just let it drip very slowly. But I'm just going to pour it in. I only go to 2 to a 1-to-1 ratio, approximately. I don't like it too watered. I don't add sugar. I don't sweeten it. Some people do. This commercial absinthe these days are sweet enough. You don't need sugar. They're not the bitter herb cocktails of the old days. And again, this is clandestine from Switzerland. Sorry. It is one of the best absinthes out there. If you notice, it's not green. It's its natural clear color, which really distilled absinthe is. By high end, I mean it's not a cheap bottle. Not as much as some scotches that I've had the pleasure of tasting from friends, but it's probably the single most expensive thing in my collection. That's why it's only special occasions. Thanks, friends, for joining me for the announcement. My Vorjuna shirt, I feel like I should be drinking mead out of a horn, but we'll do the absinthe. A fitting kickoff to what is apparently going to be a year of working, being of dedicated time to work on games. Well, hello. Hello, Hope's Flames X. Good to see you too. Um, so I don't know if you heard the announcement. I don't know if you heard the announcement of my getting the year sabbatical to work on a game project, to work on my game project. But I don't know if you were told that. You might have been told that by somebody, maybe someone you live with. But so here we are. Cool. I didn't know if she got a chance to mention it or not. I don't know when she got home tonight or what today during the day. So, um, yeah, that's why I decided to do this podcast. So about the launch of Fox and Boar. And again, I was working on the logo actually on Twitch last week. Yeah, seriously, I know. Well, she's asked me a couple times. Yeah, I have a couple other friends who were following me. And you know, I understand temperatures run hot. And I mean, like, my aunt was like, you should just quit if they don't give it to you. Look, that's not the way to approach this. First of all, I can't afford to. Unless she would like to support me, you know, I really can't afford to. But I even had a couple friends who were like, you know, if they don't give you this. But, you know, there were 11 applicants. They only are supposed to give 3 by contract. They gave 5. They granted mine. They added an extra line because I agreed to do it for a year. So the year I get paid less for a year, but I get to stay home and work on a game and game projects. Like, you know, again, like I'm saying to my old school friends here, like whoever thought you'd ever get the opportunity to get paid to sit home and write a role playing game or finish a role playing game. So part of the pitch was that, of course, this game does take a little different approach than a lot of what's out there already. The first key kind of opinion of it is that it's very different from a lot of the RPGs that are out there. That it's not task, treasure, monster based. It's story based. If you've played the old White Wolf games, I don't know anything about the new White Wolf's world setting. I have heard there are some really train wrecky, cringy elements. I don't know anything about it. I've attempted to kind of avoid it. So if I'm gonna play with the 20th anniversary edition from a few years ago that has the rules that I've known for 20 years, you know. But that it's very story and character based. Well, I know a few of you know Vampire because we've played it. At least 4 of you. PJ probably from when the game first came out, and Andy and Justin most recently. I don't know if Fuzz has played. I don't know who else is out there lurking. Hello, whoever you are. But one of the key opinions of Tales of the Harrowed Land is that it's very story based, and even though the longest playtest I've run lasted almost 2 years, and it was this overland adventure with a cursed artifact, all the tropes you expect in sword and sorcery literature, but still it was very much about exploring the cultures and the characters that are met along the way, versus kill a monster and get its treasure and gain power. You know, that's kind of what I wanted to take it away from. And as I've told people, you start out pretty kick-ass in this game. You're not. Hi Mel, thanks. You are a weak character. You're not first level. I mean, you're going out there as a hero equivalent. Maybe not quite Conan, but you know, somebody of that potential stature. And you step out into this world with your notoriety, your reputation already in place. You know, you are a hero out of the gate. So it's a different kind of game. It's also different because it is not set in a medieval European world. It is much older than that. It is rooted in our real world cultures and histories of the Fertile Crescent and the South Asian continent. It has I've been told it has a very Persian, Akkadian, early Indian, as an Indian subcontinental feel to it. The races are by and large not white. They're not white people. They're not European. So there is this whole other interest that has kind of sprung up around this game, particularly among academics, in that I'm taking a different approach. And in fact, I've had my one colleague who is an Indian art historian say to me, well, I we need to sit down and we need to talk about the mythology and the culture of the region. I say, yeah, it's absolutely fine. That's part of my goal in this. Yeah. So you played Werewolf more. Okay, yeah. So I played both. I played all of them. I've played every single one of them over the years when they came out. I think ending at, I think, well, probably the last game we bought Dark Ages 20th anniversary edition because that's Diana's favorite game and that's one of my favorite games. Um, the setting for Vampire Dark Ages. I think the last new book we bought was actually Fey Dark Ages, which frankly was the most interesting game they ever put out. But I am completely convinced this is unplayable. It is so kind of, you play an actual fairy, like a mythological fairy, and they are so not human, you know? And it's really cool because they're much more like the mythological beings. But there's this real responsibility among the players to take on these roles. So it's a really interesting game. And I think that's the last new White Wolf book we bought. And that was already quite a few years ago. That was when White Wolf was the old White Wolf. So this game, Tales of the Howard Line, has kind of that feel. In fact, I unapologetically borrowed the 10D die pool system from White Wolf. It functions differently, though. So you don't have a better chance to fail the more dice you have, unlike Vampire, which was always the flaw of that system. I have a 12 die pool. Look, I rolled 8 ones. Oh, wait, my hand blew off, or, I killed all my friends or something. It was this catastrophic result if you ended up having more dice. This is more balanced than that, but you do start out with die pools, which are augmented by your skill points. And that's a whole other thing. I won't get into the rules of this tonight. I have a whole episode written on how I built the rules, or at least notes on it written. So tonight's really just kind of an announcement night. I launched this stuff and the sabbatical to work on it. But I did want to talk about the game. So centric. It is. There are... I've kind of... And I did not do this intentionally because I'm really not attempting to make this a political statement any more than what can be read into such a political statement. But the two characters, which are of the two of the three ethnicities in this world, which are of origins similar to perhaps a Northern European stock. One is the former holder of the empire, and they have kind of degenerated into late Roman / House Harkonnen / Melnibona, this kind of degenerate nobles. And again, it only just fit because it fit where this culture would have started, how the empire would have spread out. This is the empire that was in power 2,000 years previous. Remnant don't hold the power they once did. And there are the Varinka, those are the Hapshire. There are the Varinka who live down kind of in the wastes. And the Dunwich Har, Hills Have Eyes-ish people that live in a city called Yog-sothoth, that they were originally tribal herdsmen. And they were lured into the city by something. And I lived at something completely ambiguous at the start, but it corrupted them. So they were, or perhaps similar to the Stygians, but not of the R.E. Howard complexion. Because we know in R.E. Howard, the more evil someone is, the darker their skin is. I mean, that was one of the problems of that era of fiction, of American and English fiction, is that there was that definite Anglophilia, and this thought that the other, and even Tolkien suffered from it for a bit. He was more balanced, but the evil people are over there. They're dark skinned, and they have funny color hair and funny colored eyes, and they live over there. They're the other. So early literature trade other ethnicities outside of the European ethnicity as the other. And this thread is still seen in a lot of fantasy. I know there's been all this backlash against a lot of modern fantasy, including Dungeons and Dragons, of, blackwashing. yeah, I know, and I really defended PJ, I've really defended Tolkien in a lot of ways, because I don't think he was consciously racist. Unlike Robert E. Howard, who was unapologetically racist. I mean, he was, or Lovecraft. Yeah, Lovecraft was an outrageous racist even for his time. Like you read some of his letters, like this guy really never dealt with anybody who wasn't like him. Yeah, but when I saw that interview with Tolkien where he's talking about the Semitic people, I was just rubbing my forehead and cringing. Yeah. Howard and Lovecraft for their day were outlandish. outlandishly racist. It makes sense that in their worldview, the other is the, outer god worshipping villain or devil worshipping villain. And I really needed to invert that. When I started, I wrote it up. So I've written a whole other game, as some of you know, at least the backstory of the game, Tales of the Blight Realms, which that's still in flux. There's a lot of discussion about that. It's a horror role playing game, basically a zombie apocalypse fantasy game, and that was intentionally European. And I talk about that in the video I'm working on now for From the Tomes, which hopefully again in the next couple of weeks will be out. Where I talk about that I wanted it to be specifically your kind of typical fantasy world with a lot of Europe. It's very kind of Witcher and Warhammer like. It's got a more of kind of Germanic or Eastern European feel to the landscape, but then there is this incursion of supernatural horror, undead, zombies, take your pick. It's all in there, Lovecraftian things. So it's a horror fantasy game. That game is temporarily shelved, and there's a bunch of reasons, which I won't go into tonight. So hopefully that will still come out. Hoping we will still see that sometime. And that I wanted to be European fantasy that's familiar to most fantasy players, to add to this aspect of it being a horror game. That these kind of familiar tropes of fantasy that they see are now being inverted. Whereas this world, Asvarna, which is the name of the world for Tales of the Hard Land, particularly the New Kingdoms. So there's a bit of a backdrop crossover, and there's a whole story behind this. But this world was overwhelmed. Here's the Varinka, kind of the creepy, sort of Lovecraftian sorcerer type that inhabit this city. 10 points if anybody can guess what some of the costuming was modeled off of. The artist Joseph Arsenault, I've known as Jeff for years. Jeff Arsenault, he's linked on all my pages. He's an amazing fantasy illustrator. And he's doing all the primary work for Tales of the Hard Land. But he had a really specific reference for this, which I did not prompt. And then when I looked at it, I was like, hey, Jeff, you know what that looks like? And he's like, that's funny because that's what I used as a character model for the costuming. So, there was a specific reference, ended up being really cool because it was kind of how I was picturing the world in the city anyway. But, I wanted it to be very clear that the people are kind of anglicized. Like the Melek she's still a glass. I distinctly wanted to say that there's this whole other culture out there with their own rich mythology, their own rich world that I don't have one here. I don't think I have. I thought the Rubar were. Maybe I did not. Do I still have another people of the land to do? I guess I do. But what do you know? So the Rubari are rooted in South Asian social structure, caste systems. There's a lot of overtones of Zoroastrianism and Hinduism in their culture, but that's kind of the dominant cult right now. There's also this history of animism that I've woven into their belief system, which of course I borrowed from non-Western sources as well. The Fror are kind of the mountain dwelling. They're kind of most akin maybe to a Bulgarian or a Finno-Ungaric people. With heavy overtones of the indigenous people that would have. There's a whole other place in the world where they inhabit this area that is more or less a kind of Arctic region. So then you can't really get there at the start of the game, but that's where they source from. So they definitely have kind of borrowed from these indigenous traditions that would have inhabited, say, Finland, then migrated over through the North Sea corridors, and eventually ended up in Greenland, and eventually ended up in Canada, and eventually come down into the other continent, the main North American continent. I actually read a lot of history and mythology on Ghana, West Africa, to kind of try to base some of the culture there. And in all these cases, I also really studied the language, and I tried to develop their linguistic patterns. I have not sit, I'm not talking. I'm not sitting down. I've not sat down and written full languages yet for any of these people. So that's on the scope of at least even a year's time to work on this game. So a lot of this game's already in place. The system is pretty sound. The core system is pretty sound. We haven't had any major hangups with the core system. As usual, magic is the big problem. Up until at the end of a 2-year play session, the last game session, we were working on the magic system, and there were still things that we were having trouble balancing, having trouble making consistent from... Now, there are no classes. It's all skill and profession based, so this is something that we are still working on. Like, if you select a particular gift, you can get a certain type of magic or other abilities, and getting the balance of those is definitely been a challenge. But that's why we have to play test more. And I'm hoping to open up to... I've run with several different groups, but I'm hoping to start open play tests that I literally can just send you a packet and you can sit down with your friends and run a 4-hour session within hopefully by the fall. I think that will help iron out any additional things that that need to be fixed before we go into a publication state. Now, according to the sabbatical contract, the stuff on a contract, generally by next year at this time, I should be entering a Kickstarter. I didn't, there's no timeline. They didn't say by this time next year you have to enter a Kickstarter or at backer level. But I'd like to start getting it backed and getting it ready to go and published by next summer. That's kind of my goal. I mean, I'm prepared to do a lot of it myself, but I think having it backed is also good to get publicity. But before I do that, I'd like to get it out to some conventions and some other groups to play test. So hopefully everybody here. I mean, several of you I see bi-weekly, if not weekly. So hopefully we'll definitely get some more of this in once we finish our current game, and then once the summer hits, I'll see what's going on. And again, it's kind of bizarre that next year at this time, I will have already spent several months being paid to play test a game, to run a role-playing game. So it's very, very weird. It's not quite being famous on Critical Role, but it is kind of cool to have the option. And it was interesting when I was sitting with the committee, like this whole multicultural, this whole depth of history that I've gone into. And I showed them what I'd done. They said, well, are you... Yeah, good work for you, and get it. And again, I consider this very fortunate. I mean, I've worked at it. To be in a situation where at this time I can propose this sabbatical and have a committee that's favorable to it and an administration that's also favorable to it. Because there was this whole push this past week where they were talking about introducing more technology and virtual reality and augmented reality coursework and concepts into the school at large. And I think this all just kind of hit right at the right time. Because I do want to make some, for the board game especially, and I've talked to Fran. A couple of you guys know Fran. Fran's a software engineer and programmer. But he's suggested about doing a augmented reality overlay for the board game, and that would be really cool. Because this game in particular is a tile-based board game, which I don't think anyone here, maybe Justin was here the one night we played it. I think he popped in the one night we were playing it. But it would be kind of cool to have a virtual overlay, so like you could overlay it and see the terrain and see the characters on the board, or the playing pieces in the board game. That would be rather neat. Isn't that neat? That'd be really neat. Yeah. I think you popped over that night, if I remember correctly. We were already playing, but you came over just to hang for a little bit. I think it was not too long before Baby 2 and ran over to escape a little bit before Baby 2 arrived. We played with on Sunday. Marauding. They were actually pretty quiet Sunday. They were pretty chill. Guess they had a party that morning. They were all tired out. Yeah, so that's where I'm at tonight. That's why I decided to do this a little. Thanks for tuning in. At one point there was like 8 or 10 people in here. That's like Shocking number. But I'm going to be keeping this up, hopefully, and this will be a way that I can very quickly and very informally update people and maybe show examples of the game. And then I'll reserve the longer YouTube videos for, you know, I definitely want to get at least one or two more done in the next few weeks. Next 2 months. One or two more done in the next one done in the next couple weeks, and another one done before the end of the semester, because it's just, again, I've really, because I sit on this major committee too, so that's the whole other thing, is this committee's been kind of active but not really for the past 2 years during the pandemic, and now that we're back, there is just literal, I mean, pages and pages and pages. I always tell my students that's the unfun part of academia, but you know, you sit on a committee because it benefits you, it benefits your colleagues. And it's actually kind of interesting, though. It's a ridiculous amount of work. It's all about the curriculum restructures and writing courses and stuff. So I've always kind of had an interest in that. I wouldn't want to do just that for the rest of my life, but now that I'll be going on sabbatical, some other suckers will have to join on that committee and take my place. So I can feel the envy walking down the hall sometimes. Though I got a lot of congratulations from my colleagues today, but I could also feel the envy oozing off of them. So this is another funny thing that, you know, all you guys being gamers will find amusing and probably not shocking. But so Bill Crosby and I don't think anyone here has met Bill. Bill's a colleague of mine. He also does my online game Friday nights, but I don't think he hasn't been to the house. I don't think you guys would have met him. Unlike Tom and Craig, who Tom also plays in that game, so you guys know, several of you know Tom. But we you know, we just running this game stuff. Bill's 15 years, however long he's been there, and I've been doing it for 10 years. He was one of the people that hired me to you know, because he knew I was into gaming and game design and all that. So we just assume people like really have a clue, or at least somebody has a clue what we do. Like somebody, right? And the mind-blowing thing about sitting in this committee, and like I said, there was the one woman there who kind of knew about role-playing games, so I imagine she'd had some experience with it. She knew terms like Dungeons and Dragons and Pathfinder. You know, like she knew what I was talking about when I mentioned them as a reference, and that was nice. But like everyone else on the committee I sat on for the sabbatical just had no clue. You know, again, it was like I was speaking this alien gamer language, this alien language to them, and I wasn't bothered by it. But I'm thinking, wow, like what we do day to day in this other department. And I teach visual arts too. I teach photography. I teach graphic design on occasion. I teach audio production. So I teach a variety of things, which they kind of get. Like, oh, he's a photography teacher, an art teacher, you know. Teaches video class or whatever. But then when it came to the game design and I'm explaining kind of like what we do in the department and how my project would interface with our work there, you could tell like they were interested. It wasn't that they were blowing me off, but they never really thought about what is it that gamers and game designers do. So that was kind of an interesting wake-up call, you know? Like, that was kind of like, wow, most of the world out there still, like, doesn't remotely have an idea what we do. And as I've said several times, I think if I went up in front of a different committee that were less friendly to this idea and maybe a little less progressive, because all the people on this committee were kind of like progressively minded as far as education and you know, and how to handle things. All right, man. Good talking to you. Good seeing you. Have a good one, Fuzz. Thank you. I'll be jumping back on again at some point. Maybe I'll watch one of your game streams sometime. Maybe I'll get some streams going on here. Good seeing you even virtually and talking to you. Maybe we'll meet again at a camp out if we find another spot. Some of that, even though did you see this? They have to switch the place for East Coast things. So yeah, we'll keep an eyeball out. But yeah, so Fuzzy and I met at a heathen event at a East Coast thing, which is the local ish. It's local for us. It's not local for a lot of people. And in fact, he's one of the guys that was fundamental in finding the site and starting it years ago. And that's where I met him. And like we talked when we met there, but we didn't really talk. And online, we've realized we have like all these mutual interests, including gaming and music, which isn't surprising. I think the last pagan/heathen meetup I went to, we ended up talking about craft beer and Dungeons and Dragons most of the time. There was nothing mystical, nothing occult being discussed. Having an occult coven. I'm like, no, we pretty much just talked about D&D craft beer most of the time. So it wasn't even a thing where it was very esoteric. Well, I guess it is. As I was saying, I think it's very esoteric to a lot of people who don't have access to gamers and the gaming world and all these things. There's been no cat bombing tonight. I'm quite disappointed. But yeah, so that's where I'm at. What's everyone else doing? What have all you been up to? Rambled on for the last hour, talking about Fox and board games, and look, I got some new people just joined in. Fox and board games, and having a drink for a year off to work on a game. This is nice. Yeah, pretty much, Andy. That was pretty much it. April 1st. It's not a joke, is it? That's cool. Congratulations. Though moves are stressful, but it's kind of cool that you'll be moving in there. I think I'll see you guys this weekend. I got to send a note out. I mean, we're going to be here Saturday, so. We're game 2 Cthulhu. Continue on the Down Darker Trails game. Justin, I just saw on Sunday. Thanks again for hosting. That was a lot of fun. The guys had a lot of fun. So it was good to see everybody. That's fine. Yeah, that's fine. I mean, Saturday we'll be here. So even if we end up just hanging, if for some reason we don't get a majority to play role-playing games, which I hope we do, but if for some reason we don't get a majority to play, then, I mean, we're fine hanging. I'll send a note to the usual text a bit later. And Peach and I still have to plan now that things are settling down with COVID. I hope things are slightly getting back to a bit of safety for everybody. But PJ and I have talked about a gaming weekend now we started talking about it a few months before. I think the fall before COVID really came in about doing it, because we met at a Vampire LARP years ago and played a bunch of World of Darkness gaming together, and we were talking about getting some of our old crew together. I'm not going to be on too much longer either, but PJ, we were going to do maybe a weekend, go up to their place or meet someplace down here and do an old school event. COVID started, and we were just like, yeah, no, let's just wait and see what happens. Playing a game about plagues and darkness is great, but let's not create any more problems in real life for anybody. Yeah, so that's where we're at. Well, thanks again, folks. Thanks for tuning on. Was I guess making an invite and pumping stuff out on Discord is actually a thing, because I had quite a few people popping in and out tonight. Some people stayed and chatted, some people didn't, and that's fine. Yeah, no. So, as who was just here, Justin said something about this a couple weeks ago when we were playing Blood Bowl. In fact, he's like, you had that D&D campaign where the whole thing was this plague, and this demonic plague that was spreading through the land, and you were doing this like a year before COVID started. I was like, that was completely just my personal interest in plot lines, and he was like, and then one of the last encounters of that campaign that we ran, everybody's like, wait, we have to social distance from the infected gnolls. It was kind of this ongoing joke that real life was mirroring the campaign world. Here you get infected gnolls at the mall. You have to social distance from them, because like gnolls in role-playing games, they're not willing to keep their distance from you. Fortunately, things at school have been decent this semester. I haven't had any issues with anybody distancing or wearing. This is the school regulations. You have to wear a mask. I only had one student. I don't think she was a student. I think she was visiting somebody. She's like walking like right down the hall past me with no mask, and then she got like kind of an attitude with me when I was like, I got to put a mask on. And I was like, okay, I can call security, right? And then she kind of shut up and left the building. And I was just like I don't want to be the police. I don't want to do this, but this is part of the rules of being in this building. Everyone has to do it. It's not, I don't care about your political opinion, your personal opinion. I don't care if you like it or not, but that's the rule. If that's the rule of the building, the school, and you're in the school buildings, you follow that rule. So, but that was like one isolated incident, and like I said, I don't even think she was a student. I think she was there visiting somebody, and probably didn't realize it, then got defensive. Of course, one of my colleagues came by during class just to congratulate me, and she's like walking down the hall with no mask, and she gets to my classroom door, and she's like, "Oh my god, I don't know how to wear my mask," and she quickly got her mask. It was just funny because she just came from her office and her clothes and totally forgot to put her mask on. So I was like, yeah, well, again, I'm not overly, double vaccinated, so I'm not even that worried right now. But still, it was just funny. All right, thanks everyone for tuning in, and I'll jump back on maybe in a week. Hopefully, I'll see some of you in person. I'll see the rest of you probably online. Have a good one.